It was a 2-day journey from New Plymouth to Auckland, traveling around the north end of the North Island. Auckland is in a protected harbor, and as we approached the final turn, we could see the city with its distinctive skyline featuring the Sky Tower. Entering the Waitemata Harbor, the North Head Historic Reserve was on our right, and the town of Davenport beyond. Further into the bay is the Harbor Bridge, which provides a direct connection between Davenport and Auckland. Auckland is an attractive city built on a hillside. It has mostly modern architecture, with the most notable exception being the Ferry Building, which was built in 1898 and still functions as the terminal for ferry boats providing transport to the outlying islands. Auckland is a city of 1.6 million people and has the extraordinary feature of being located in one of the densest volcanic fields in the world, with over 50 dormant volcanoes surrounding the city. The largest and most distinctive of these is Mount Rangitoto, which sits on an uninhabited island right outside the entrance to the bay. In Auckland, we disembarked from the Asmara journey and spent the day taking a city bus tour, stopping at several locations around the city. Our first stop was the Sea Life Kelly Tarlton Aquarium. There we saw a display recreating the expedition of the British explorer Robert Scott as he attempted in 1901 and again in 1910 to be the first man to reach the South Pole. Braving minus 40-degree temperatures, he did reach the geographic South Pole, but arrived 5 weeks after the Norwegian explorer Ronald Amundsen. Unfortunately, Scott and his party perished during their attempted trek back to the coast. The aquarium has a large collection of king and gentoo penguins. King penguins are the second largest species population and are recognized by their distinctive yellow markings. Gentoo penguins are the third largest population and are recognized by a wide white stripe extending across their head. To keep the penguins healthy, the aquarium simulates the variation in subarctic temperatures, wind, ice, and snow mounds, and even introduces novel objects such as soccer balls to enrich their lives. The primary aquarium includes a moving walkway which passes through a clear tunnel, allowing close inspection of a variety of sea creatures who swim above and beside us, with no concern for our proximity. These include sharks, turtles, stingrays, and a great many other fish that I couldn't identify. In other smaller tanks we saw lobsters, including the Spanish lobster, which is native to New Zealand. There were seahorses that can eat a shrimp in 5 milliseconds, the time it takes one stroke of a honeybee's wing. And there were octopuses, which are the most intelligent invertebrate species, with many skills including the ability to change colors, hide in their own cloud of black ink, and fit into narrow spaces. The next stop on our city bus tour was the Auckland War Memorial Museum. This museum is located on a hill overlooking the city, and it had an excellent display commemorating the sacrifices made during the World Wars. We chose to focus our time learning about the native Mauri people. We saw massive canoes that they constructed to allow them to migrate from Polynesia to New Zealand in the 1300s. Also fascinating was their use of totem poles, similar to the Eskimo tribes in Canada, even though there was no known contact between them. But the highlight was watching a group of young Maori men and women perform traditional songs and dance. Here are a few examples. highlight was the haka, which was performed by warriors before battle to intimidate enemies by demonstrating their fierceness and strength. This chant is still used by the New Zealand national rugby team, the All Blacks. After the show, we had an opportunity to meet and speak with the performers, who told us of their desire to keep the Mauri culture and language strong in New Zealand. After leaving the museum, the tour bus continued through outlying neighborhoods of the city, passing the Eden Park Rugby Stadium, a cricket field where players were practicing their skills, and many residential houses that displayed the unique eclectic architecture of the area. Back in the city, we had a short walk to the Sky Tower, where we dined at the top of the tower in a restaurant which makes one full rotation every hour. We began looking northeast toward the port where our ship had been docked. Rotating eastward, we looked beyond the harbor toward Waiheke Island. To the east is the Auckland Museum, situated alone on a hilltop. To the southeast are city buildings and Mount Eden in the distance. To the south is the rugby stadium and the Manukau Harbor on the horizon. To the southwest is the Tiritiri mountain range. To the west, we can see the western end of the Waitemata Harbor and the mooring area for yachts. To the northwest is the harbor bridge and the North Wharf. And finally, to the north is the ferry terminal, and on the far side, the harbor town of Davenport, as well as the volcanic island of Rangitoto in the distance. Early the next morning, we boarded a ferry for Tiritiri Matangi Island, which is an isolated bird sanctuary and scientific reserve. Once we were beyond the harbor, we headed north past Rangitoto Island to the Whangaparoa Peninsula, and then onto Tiritiri Matangi Island with its lone lighthouse dating back to 1865. The dock was a minimal structure, and it was immediately apparent why we had been instructed to bring everything we needed and plan to leave nothing behind, even the dirt off your shoes which might contain disease. After separating into small guided groups, we followed the trails, ending up at the visitor center next to the lighthouse. At every turn, we learned about the birds on the island and were given an abundance of photo opportunities. Our photos included the North Island robin, North Island saddleback, bellbird, red-crowned parakeet, partridges, and many others. At least 12 of the species on this island are endangered and have been relocated from other parts of the country. After a 2-hour hike, we reached the lighthouse, where we took a welcome rest and viewed the sights from the top of the hill. We then walked down the service road and back to the wharf in time to board the ferry, which makes only one return trip a day. As we left the island, I felt I had been privileged to experience the beauty of nature in this protected environment. The next day we took another one-day ferryboat tour, this time to Waiheke Island for a wine tasting excursion. Waiheke Island is just beyond the mouth of the Waitemata Harbor. It is the second largest island in the area, but has the largest population. This is a laid-back but affluent destination that has the reputation for producing fine wines enhanced by a favorable climate. Our first stop today was the Kennedy Point Vineyard. It is the only organic winery on the island and has the distinction of having its 2007 Shiraz selected as the best in the world in international competition. The wines we tasted were very good, especially the 2014 Reserve Shiraz. Next, we stopped at the Ringahoa Estate, which produces olive oil. They explained to us how olive oil is made. The olives are harvested when there is a mix of green, red, and black fruit on the tree. This is to achieve a proper balance of sweet and bitter flavor. A tarp is spread beneath the tree, and the olives are raked off the branches by hand. Each crate makes 2 quarts of olive oil. The olives are poured into the processing machine, where they are washed and then crushed, including the seeds, to make a paste, which is then mixed for 45 minutes to start the oil separation. Finally, a centrifuge is used to spin out the oil, while the remaining solids are used as animal feed. Next stop was the Peacock Sky Vineyard, which was on the top of a hill adjacent to a grass landing strip. From this elevation we could see Auckland as we enjoyed our wine and food pairings. The last stop was the Stony Ridge Winery, which is in a pleasant orchard setting. Here our group sat together at one table and had an enjoyable family-style lunch while wines were tasted and discussed. As we headed back to Auckland, I reflected that it had been a most enjoyable day, and that both the wines and the quality of life on this island were to be envied.